Good morning, everyone. I just completed a very chilly, should I say the least, tour of part of Far Rockaway to assess the damage that was occurring here as a result of flooding. Upwards of 3 feet of water rushed through the streets, damaged some of the homes. We had a chance to speak to some of the homeowners about the stresses they're under and working on the cleanup as well. So I wanted to come and just talk to some of the locals and also our elected officials who have been great partners in this effort, as they always are, but particularly when their constituents need assistance, they know who to call, and that's why I'm here today. I do want to first of all thank Congressman Greg Meeks, who was on the tour with us, for helping us with any assistance we're going to need with FEMA statewide. We need all the voices of our delegation to help get through this storm. It has different impacts throughout the state of New York, and I'll be getting to that in a couple of minutes, but thank you, Congressman Greg Meeks. Our Borough President Donovan Richards is here, again, someone who has been hands-on dealing with disasters since our first days working together, very experienced in what has been happening in his beloved borough of Queens, especially as we deal with the wrath of Mother Nature. So thank you, Borough President Donovan Richards. Our Senator James Sanders, who we walked through, talked to some of his friends and neighbors to just find out firsthand what has happened here over the last 48 hours. The raging water coming through streets, sweeping cars away, creating havoc and fear in the lives of individuals who live here. So I want to thank Senator Sanders for leading our tour. Assembly Member Khalil Anderson, again, another great champion for the people he represents, as well as Councilmember Brooks Powers. I want to thank her for joining us as well. And the Red Cross staff who are hosting us here at this warming center. And we also are joined by New York City Office of Emergency Management Commissioner Zach Iskol, who will be speaking as well. So I'll be giving a statewide storm assessment and update, but let's just talk about where we walked through. We saw what happened on the Bay side when the bulkheads were compromised once again. We know we need an assistance from the Army Corps of Engineers to rebuild them. They've been damaged since Sandy, and the state of New York and the city of New York are certainly going to be helping in that effort to protect the neighbors from the water rushing out of the bay and flooding their streets. So that was something we saw firsthand. And also knowing that with the freezing temperature, the water literally froze and created something that was reminiscent of a skating pond or an ice skating rink. And it's very, very dangerous, especially for our senior citizens as they try to venture out. Walking on that ice and even driving on that ice is incredibly dangerous. So we're going to be making sure that people understand that. We also I'll be giving, Catherine Garcia will be giving some more updates, but our transportation systems are working well. We had some stoppages on the trains yesterday, delays at the airports, but the airports are open. The subways, the trains are all functioning, which is quite miraculous given the severity of what this area went through just a short time ago. It's a bone-chilling cold. It continues to be a problem. It compromises the safety of all individuals, particularly our vulnerable seniors. People who are in their homes without heat in some places of our state. It's been a real challenge for us. So there is not one place in the state of New York where the temperature is above zero as far as the real field temperature. That's what it feels like on your skin. And so this may be an historic event in that respect alone, that every part of New York is suffering the effects as this Arctic chill continues to stay over our state. Also, if anyone else needs any assistance, we encourage them to call 311. Commissioner is going to be talking about the resources available here as well. I will now turn to what is happening in Western New York, for those of you who want an update on my hometown. Last night I had to bring in the National Guard. The conditions, the blinding snow, the zero visibility, absolute whiteouts, it may go down as one of the worst in history. People are comparing this to the dreaded blizzard of '77, where Buffalo first got its reputation for having an unprecedented amount of snow. We broke that record again a month ago. So it's very clear to me that the effects of climate change are wreaking havoc everywhere from the streets of Queens with flooding all the way up to the city of Buffalo. But it is life-threatening what is going on as we speak in Buffalo, getting calls through the night from frightened neighbors where the temperature's been off for many, many hours, of course, of a day, day and a half. And we still have statewide about 73,000 homes without power, concentrating about 33,000 of those in Erie County, about 7 in Niagara County, about 5,000 in Genesee County. So that seems to be the epicenter of this storm that just doesn't seem to be moving on. It is concentrated there. And so the National Guard had to come in to help with medical emergencies, people who cannot get to the hospital if necessary, to help doctors and nurses get to their jobs in hospitals and healthcare facilities, as well as helping our seniors who are stranded. So we have had people stranded on the highways. I understand that the New York State Thruway, which remains closed in the western part of the region, we had over 20 people stranded in a very small stretch up until a short time ago, as well as several hundred who've been stranded on various roads throughout the region. What happens in those circumstances? People literally trapped in their cars overnight. Fortunately, our state police were able to make contact with every single individual, and we literally had snow plows going up to the vehicles and rescuing people, taking them out and getting them into warming centers, because it is absolutely dangerous for anyone to be on the roads, and that includes our emergency vehicles. So our National Guard, our first responders, our ambulances, our fire trucks are all getting stuck in the snow as well. In fact, almost every fire truck in the city of Buffalo is stranded. It is stuck in snow. And we're just getting through releasing of about 14 or so ambulances that were stuck as well. So you can imagine what's going on here. People who need help are being trapped because they cannot get the emergency response because it's unsafe to be out there. So we have search and rescue operations continuing throughout the region. And the basic message is we're going to continue to keep warming centers open, encourage people to stay home. Roads are closed throughout Western New York and will be probably through Christmas Day. And it's really sad for all the individuals who've not been able to see family members, airport delays, and not able to be driving because of driving bans. But it is more important that people stay safe. You'll have your holiday with your loved ones over New Year's and into the next year, but this is a weekend where it is absolutely dangerous in some parts of our state, particularly the western part, to be out there. So we want to encourage people to stay where they are. In addition to having a statewide emergency declaration, I'll be asking the federal government for a declaration of emergency that'll allow us to seek reimbursements for the extraordinary expenses of all the overtime and the fact that we've brought in mutual aid from other parts of the state. We've deployed individuals, whether it's the utility crews have come, but also making sure that we have all the vehicles we need. But literally they cannot get through right now. No matter how many emergency vehicles we have, they just can't get through the conditions as we speak. So that is what's happening in other parts of the state. At this point, I'll be asking Catherine Garcia, the head of statewide operations, who's been embedded with all of us at our command centers, monitoring what's going on throughout the state. But I did want to put a special spotlight right now on the city of New York. Got through some tough circumstances with the high winds, the ice, the freezing cold, and it is still a dangerous situation. We want to confirm that just because you see clear skies and the rain has stopped and the flooding seems to have abated, that it is still vulnerable because of the icy cold temperatures, which can be life-threatening. So with that, Catherine Garcia, let's have a report from you.
Thank you, Governor. And I want to reiterate to everyone, even though in many parts of the state the sun is shining, the real field temperature is very dangerous. It is below zero real field across the state, and obviously far worse in Western New York. I want to talk a little bit about what we saw here. This is not the first time that we have seen extreme flooding. We need to work very closely with our federal partners to make sure that we're getting the infrastructure in place to protect these families, particularly so hard at this time of the year. State operations and our partners at Thruway, at Emergency Management, as well as the State Department of Transportation, the Department of Environmental Conservation, as well as the Parks Department, have all surged resources into Western New York. We have done many life safety missions and will continue to do that. As the governor mentioned, particularly in Genesee County, we were able to make a lot of rescues from those cars and get people to warming centers. We are moving into Buffalo. We will also be in Lackawanna as well as Amherst. All of these areas have experienced very dangerous whiteout conditions, dangerous not only for the residents but also for first responders. We are going to continue the life safety missions as soon as we get any breaks in the weather. But the weather is continuing to be very dangerous in Western New York with the lake effect snow. And we continue to make sure that we are bringing in National Guard and Humvees to make sure that we are getting to all of the people who may be in ambulances or need rescue. As the governor said, About 73,000 people are without power across the state of New York. We have over 7,000 linemen and women, as well as cut and toss crews to get power back on, because it is, of course, incredibly dangerous in these temperatures. But this is about the state coming together. This was an all-hazards event in the city. We saw severe flooding here and then freezing temperatures, which made the roads incredibly dangerous. I know that all of those agencies worked very hard to bring either pumping resources and, of course, salting resources to this area. And we also saw extreme flooding across Long Island, particularly on the South Shore. As some may know, the Meadowlark ended up having to be closed yesterday. But this is about coming together and making sure we're keeping people safe during this holiday season. I'm going to turn it over to Congressman Meeks to give us the federal perspective.
Thank you, Catherine. Let me first thank the governor for being here today, given the historic cold that this state is suffering from, and as she's indicated throughout, and she saw fit to make sure that she came here to the city of New York, and particularly here in the Rockaways, where there's been devastation in regards to the water that was coming in the Rockaways and Howard Beach and Broad Channel. Thanking also my local elected officials, my state senator James Sanders and Assemblyman Anderson and Council Member Brooks Powers for all that they've done. You know, yesterday, of course, my borough president, who I was on the phone with yesterday. I was in Washington, D.C. yesterday as we were trying to pass the omnibus budget, and I've got calls from all of them. They were on the ground here showing me pictures of exactly the flooding. Fortunately, some of it has receded, but they showed us the damage of what was yesterday and how people could not move around and get around. But with the thanks of the city and the state, we're working closely together in that regard. And the borough president was in my ear talking about FEMA and what we could do and try to make sure we can work in that regard. And I've been on the phone with FEMA as well as with SBA, looking at some other creative ways that we may be able to utilize the federal government so that we can make sure that those residents that may need additional aid, that we could figure that out and make sure that we can avoid some of the red tape. I've also talked to incoming Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries. I was on this morning so that we can strategize together with Senator Schumer so that we can make sure that we're going to bring in some of these resources. It's important. And when we were out there on the Bay side, you know, we were looking at, and I had this conversation with the Army Corps, because we need those pumping stations to make sure that they're working so that we can get the water out. And what we're looking to do, and what was important therein, that some of the property on the Bay side is owned by the city and or the state. And so we want to make sure that we can put the pumping stations in those areas so that we don't displace or harm any of the homeowners that are currently living there. So we're working collectively on that. There's a plan that that FEMA has. We're waiting on. Then hopefully at that point we can get to the ULURP process in the City Council and move that forward so that we can make sure the resources that are necessary so that we can prevent the kind of flooding here. One of the good things that I think that is taking place, we saw on the ocean side primarily, all of the work that was done since Sandy has held. And so that's a good sign. But now we've got to make sure that we're working very, very hard to, and in an expedited manner to fix the Bay side, which has been suffering from, you know, high tides for a long period of time. These high tides come in and people can't get out of their homes. So working collectively together, I think that we can get that done. And I, again, want to just say thank you to all of the elected officials, because this is a sign of all of us coming together to work together to make that difference. And so I think that the protocol now is for me to call up our borough president, who has been running around the borough but has been focused because he knows this was his backyard, or is his backyard still, and he's been working throughout the borough to try to make sure, because all of us are suffering from this cold. You know, I can witness and testify that the airports are open, because I didn't know whether I was going to be able to get back home from Washington yesterday. Took me a few hours, but I got here. And it wasn't because of New York airports, it was because of Washington. But thank you, and thank you. I know the work that's happening in Buffalo. My chief of staff is from Buffalo. She was planning on going for Christmas at home. She couldn't get there, but she showed pictures there and showed the work that you're doing up in the Buffalo area, all of Western New York, as well as what's here. So I thank you for your work and dedication. Borough President Nichols.
Thank you, Congressmember, and let me first start off by saying to the residents of the Rockaways, Howard Beach, Hamilton Beach, that my prayers are with you, and I know it's been such a difficult time You know, during a time like this, we expect to be celebrating with our families, unwrapping gifts, and unfortunately, we have residents, once again, who've been hit hard by the devastation caused by this climate crisis we find ourselves in. And I have to thank the governor, once again, anytime, I always say you're not a fair weather friend. You're here through good, through bad, and I really want to thank you for being on the ground, and that's something you've done continuously from your time of being lieutenant governor to governor. And of course, to my colleagues from the state, city, federal level, thank you all, because it really takes us working collectively together to ensure that we can truly build back. As the Congressmember alluded to, you know, we don't want to keep going back and forth and giving these rhetorical statements on the challenges we see around infrastructure. I know he's worked very hard with FEMA. I'm very happy. I had a meeting with the Army Corps last week as well to go through some of the infrastructure upgrades we anticipate that will happen, not just for the Rockaway Peninsula, but our entire borough that continues to be plagued by this climate crisis. And you know, this work could not start sooner enough. And if I had it my way, Madam Governor, the Army Corps would start their work ASAP. But what I will say to residents in the short term who are dealing with the current crisis is to please don't fight this alone. You can come down, you can certainly call 311, but you should be able to come down to Goldie Maple Academy and to some of the other centers to make sure that you know what's available. As the Congressmember said, we were on the line yesterday discussing ways that FEMA could be creative, as well as the governor, in terms of getting you the resources you need to rebuild back during this difficult time. So we want you to know that we're fighting. And obviously, I want the president to also come in with some federal assistance as well to ensure that we can help you rebuild. I also just want to speak about those who may have been displaced by this as well. So if you lived in a basement, one of the conversations we're having with the city is to have a relocation plan for you, perhaps in some of the new permanent housing that's being built, especially if you're a Rockaway resident, but if you're not, there are opportunities. So I don't want you to fight this alone if you're looking to relocate, but we do need you to register with the Red Cross. It is critical. The Red Cross, I know as of last night, was starting to do their assessment, so we really need you to call 311 if you lived in a basement, and we're going to work extremely hard with the City of New York, with the HPD Commissioner Carrion, who I spoke with yesterday, to ensure that you can be prioritized in terms of relocating. I'll end in just saying thank you to the first responders. I know that there were a few rescue operations across the peninsula, across Howard Beach and Hamilton Beach. I'm on my way to Hamilton Beach after this, but I want to thank the first responders from the NYPD, EMS, all of those who were out on the ground to ensure that those who were impacted by the storm could get out of their homes and basements safely. That being said, I think, I don't know if I'm turning it over to Commissioner Hochul, but I am. But I want to thank the Commissioner of OEM, who was on the ground yesterday. We were on the phone early yesterday morning. He's done several briefings already, but more importantly, has ensured that the resources of the City of New York can be available during this complicated time. So I want to call up our Commissioner, Commissioner Hochul.
Thank you, Mr. VP. Thank you, Governor. Thanks for being here. It's wonderful to see you. And I also just want to start by thanking our multi-agency team. I spoke to the mayor this morning. He, city leadership, and our interagency team have been coordinating for days in the ramp up to this multi-pronged event. As the governor said, you know, dealing with cold weather, dealing with rain, dealing with high winds, and dealing with coastal flooding prolonged by the new moon and extremely high tides and offshore winds. Also want to thank the Red Cross and the volunteers. I probably spoke to Mary Barnaby, the CEO of the Red Cross, 1,000 times yesterday and last night. She has really been remarkable in stepping up, and also thanking the crews from DEP, DSNY, NYPD, FDNY, Sanitation, DSS, our team in emergency management, who are working around the clock in this cold, on this holiday weekend, away from their families. It's truly, truly remarkable the work that they're doing on behalf of their fellow New Yorkers. So I am very grateful today for their works. I'm grateful nobody was killed or seriously hurt during this weather event. But with that said, cold is still very dangerous, and we have very cold temperatures going through for the next few days. And so it is very important that we check in on our most vulnerable, on our neighbors. We have Department of Social Service crews out there as a cold blue, bringing in our homeless individuals into the shelter system, and it's really important that we continue that outreach. I also want to thank the electeds that are out here, Governor, Mr. BP, Congressman Meeks, Councilmember Brooks Powers, Councilmember Joanne Ariola, who's not here but was also out on the ground with us, Senator Sanders, Assemblymember Anderson. You have some remarkable public servants in this district, in this community. I will tell you, they're always calling, always looking out, always trying to figure out how we can get more resources here and how we can be serving this community before, during, and after emergencies, and I'm looking forward to the follow-ups we all have going forward. For New Yorkers, you can report damage, and I urge you to do this by calling 311 or by going to nyc.gov/report damage. You can also go to Red Cross facilities. We have one located here at Goldie Maple Academy in Far Rockaway. We also have another one in Howard Beach at PS 207. You can register with the Red Cross. We are using these as warming shelters today. You can also sign up to have cleanup kits delivered to your house. And there's other services that are also being provided here. So those Red Cross facilities, PS 207 in Howard Beach and Goldie Maple Academy here in Far Rockaway. I also always urge every New Yorker to sign up for Notify NYC. It's available in 14 languages, including American Sign Language. We have over 1 million subscribers. At Emergency Management, we will not rest until we have all 8 million New Yorkers registered for Notify NYC. This is where you get the critical information that you need to be prepared for emergencies before, during, and after, and to make sure you're safeguarding yourselves and your loved ones. So please sign up for Notify NYC, and appreciate it. Thank you.
Any remarks, Senator Sanders?
Always a remark.
I'm sure you do. Come on over, Senator.
First, I want to thank our governor and our incredible elected officials for leaving their families to come and check on our families down here. We will always be grateful that you were here on a Christmas Eve. We look forward to tackling these great issues together. It was amazing working on the ground. I wish we were warmer out there, but short of that, working with our assembly member, our congressman, our borough president, and our councilwoman was an amazing, one day I'll get it, and joined by our commissioner who was out there on the ground as we all froze and tried to figure out. Thank you very much, Madam Governor.
Thank you so much, Governor, for joining us here on Christmas Eve to speak to our residents. The governor didn't just come and take pictures. She came, she spoke to neighbors, she spoke to residents, and that means a lot. For the residents who live in Arverne, Edgemere, Somerville, and various parts of our district, including Deerfield, who've experienced flooding, we do have a governor here who is looking out for us and making sure that we get the investments that we need. So we're grateful for that, and we're grateful for your team. And she's been here a lot, so we really appreciate you coming to the Rockaways and coming to our district. We're looking forward to continued investment so that we can help strengthen the bulkheads around Jamaica Bay to protect our residents for the future storms. We're fighting climate change, and we have a fighter in our governor, so I appreciate you for that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. With that, I just received word, 2 announcements related to Buffalo. The Buffalo airport will be closed at least until 11 a.m. Monday. And so I think that's going to be, unfortunately, very disruptive to those who want to leave or arrive and spend time with family over the Christmas holiday. And also, the roads are not safe. So I would just say, as hard as it is, be sure to make your holiday plans for another time if you're not already united with your family, because Mother Nature threw the kitchen sink at us this time. I said she throws everything but the kitchen sink. I'm fully expecting to see the kitchen sink fall out of the sky, because we've been hit with everything from wind and flash freeze and unprecedented high, velocity of wind, almost 80 miles an hour in Buffalo and other parts of the state, very high numbers, as well as the snow, ice, flooding. So it's been a very tough one. But we have the most experienced storm team in America, the team that supports me, and I also want to thank Commissioner Voiem from the city for all the incredible work the city does. I've been in contact with Mayor Adams as well, making sure that we know all the issues that we wanted to address, and that's what we have. Also, the loss of 2 lives in Buffalo, storm-related, because people are not able to get to medical attention, which is, again, a crisis situation that unfolds before your eyes, and you realize that life-saving ambulances and emergency medical personnel cannot get to people during a blizzard situation. I forgot that the council member is over here. If you wanted to say anything, Councilmember Lena Brooks Powers. Okay.
Just would like to once again thank you, Governor, for continuing to stand steadfast with the community when we need you most. Also to the city agencies under the leadership of Commissioner Iskel, the response was almost immediate. Having the city represented here on the ground, making sure that we were able to open up this site, and just seeing the cross level of government coordination. We showed how impactful we can be when we work together from the federal, state, and city level. And so we have work to do in the days to come in terms of our resiliency here in Rockaway and making sure we're dealing with the repairs that are needed also. So I'm looking forward to working and being a partner. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor. Thank you, Councilor, and thank you all for attending here today. If there's any questions, we'll be happy to take them before we get on the road and have to survey what's going on in the rest of the state as well.
Yeah, I've been speaking with some residents here who live in these impacted areas, and it seems like they feel a little bit annoyed by the government in terms of like these infrastructure problems that they've been having, and it always impacts their lives. We've been hearing over and over about these repairs. What can you do based off of what you've seen? What are you guys working on? And what do you have to say for people who are a little frustrated that it is taking?
No, I understand. In fact, we visited one home and they still had damage in their backyard from Sandy. That was a decade ago, so that frustration is real. And the most significant thing we can do is focus on the infrastructure that we think will make a tremendous difference, and that is the Army Corps of Engineers project to stop the water raging in from the bay when the tide gets higher, the winds whip up, and it's that the bulkhead that we need to sustain there. So we are working closely. The city and the state have reviewed the plans from the Corps of Engineers. That is the first step. I know the Congressman is devoted to getting this done, and all of our state and local partners want to see this done. I believe that'll make a significant difference. Just like we saw the resiliency built up after Sandy on the ocean side, we can do the same on the bay, and that is of a paramount importance to all of us right now. So I know the impatience is waning. They're tired, they're exhausted, and just one more storm is just more than they can take. And we are working urgently to give them relief. Any other comments?
Let me just say on that too, because one of the things, and it is real frustration. Anybody that knows anything or ever lived out here in the Rockaways, you know of the frustration. It seems to be plan after plan after plan and never coming to reality. But I think that this time it is coming to reality because, as indicated, the Army Corps is working very closely with the city and the state. We're getting close to a ULURP process. And one of the things that I can say now through the bipartisan infrastructure bill that was passed in Congress this year, there is money. So it's not going to be a question of whether or not we have the money to do what's necessary. The money is in the bank. We just need to go through the particulars now to make sure. And as I indicated earlier, we want to make sure that we lead the homeowners so that as we build a pump, that they are not affected or we don't have to take away any private land. So we're looking and exploring all of the public land that may be owned by the city or the state to see if we can design something to come from there to build the pumps to keep the water pumping out. But the money's there, the will is there, and working collectively, the city, the state, and the federal government, we're working very closely together to make sure that this happens.
Let me add, so the public commenting process is going to begin sometime in January, I believe, and we just had a meeting with the Army Corps last week, and well, we're talking about the Rockaways. There are other areas of Queens as well that have been impacted and continuously be impacted by climate change. So here, Howard Beach, Hamilton Beach, all of these projects are working in tandem, and we're talking about $52 billion. So this is not something to sneeze at. So residents are absolutely correct to feel like government hasn't responded, but as the Congressmember alluded to, who fought very hard for this money, we have $52 billion in the bank, and that process will kick off, and we're gonna ask everybody to certainly turn out as public comments start to begin in Queens in the next few months or two.
Any other questions? We good? All right. To all who observe, wish you all a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. and be safe out there. I know it's bitter cold. It's a tough, tough time. And after holidays disrupted by COVID over the last few years and people looking so forward to getting together, it may be a tough time to do that depending on what part of the state you live in. But we'll be there for you. Our teams will be out there in the streets and the highways and the byways, making sure that everyone is safe and we get through everything Mother Nature insists upon throwing at us, because we're New Yorkers and we always rise up, and we'll be fine in just a matter of a couple of days. So thank you, everyone, and appreciate your attention.